Welcome to the Nerdist Podcast number 825, which is brought to you by Squarespace. Whether you need a landing page, a beautiful gallery, a professional blog, or an entire online store, it's all included with your Squarespace website. Check them out. I'm going to talk more about them in a second, but I want to tell you about some community corkboard things from the Nerdist community, from people just like you. Comedian Shane Moss will be going on tour next month for his show called A Good Trip. It's about comedy, it's about science, it's about psychedelics. Dates are still being added, but he's going to be going all over the country. You can find out more info and get ticket links at Shane Moss, that's MAUSS.com. Chris Kent from our Nerdist community just got married to his best friend and fellow nerd, Lisa Hammer, and he'd love a shout-out. Lisa does not know that Chris wrote in. So if they're driving somewhere together, hopefully there's an epic amount of pants pooping when she heard this. Well, let me take that back. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully she was so excited but was able to keep the poop inside where it belongs until a proper repository can be located. This went in a very weird direction. Kent Hammer, nice job. Oh, whose last name did you take? I mean, Lisa Hammer's pretty rad. Chris Hammer is great. I mean, Lisa Kent sounds cool, sure. But did you guys do Hammer Kent? Or Kent Hammer, Private Eye? I think you guys need to create your own special Kent Hammer character and make a comic book about it. Please do that as my wedding gift to you. Please do a thing for me. Also, I want to say that At Midnight has been moved to 11:30. I know some people were upset by this because the show is called At Midnight and it's at 11:30. But we announce a winner at midnight. How about that? Huh? How about that? At Midnight is now on at 11:30 on Comedy Central following The Daily Show. So this episode is Colman Domingo, who plays Victor Strand on Fear the Walking Dead, who is a character that I immediately loved, and Colman Domingo I love even more as a person. We connected so hard on this podcast. I adore this guy, that to the point that at the end of the podcast, I was like, would you please come to my wedding? And this was a couple days before I got married, and he said, really? Of course. And he came to my wedding, and it was awesome. So thank you, Colman Domingo. I adore you. He is promoting Fear the Walking Dead and Birth of a Nation, which is in theaters October 7th. Also, his play Barbecue, which he directed, will be playing at the Geffen Playhouse September 14th through October 16th. You can find tickets and info at geffenplayhouse.org/barbecue, spelled out the entire way, BARBECUE. So please, if you're in Los Angeles, in the Los Angeles area, go check out Support Theater, support Colman Domingo. And I love you, Colman Domingo. This episode, as I said, brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is going to set you up for whatever type of online thing you want to create. All right? If you want to build a website, it's simple, it's intuitive. You can add and arrange your content features with simple clicks. Free custom domain. Squarespace makes adding a domain to your site simple. If you sign up for a year, you're going to receive that custom domain for free for a year. The templates are great. It's the best in-class online store with Squarespace award-winning templates, customizable settings if you want to put your own spin on it, and more, without a single plugin. Very seamless commerce tools if you want to sell something. From nationally recognized brands to your favorite local shops, they are trusted by hundreds of thousands of savvy shop owners. And fantastic 24/7 customer support. Every member of the customer care team is an experienced Squarespace user, not someone just reading off a list of prompts on a screen. So, start your free trial today. Squarespace.com. Enter the offer code NERDIST to get 10% off your first purchase. Squarespace, set your website apart. And now, here's the Nerdist Podcast number 825 with Mr. Colman Domingo. Katie, please roll the thing.
Now entering Nerdist.com.
yet?
Saturday.
Saturday? Oh
Yeah.
my God! How's
I
it
know.
go? You all ready?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's. I think the only stress is really all of the family coming in and making sure the seating chart. You know, Lydia just did the seating chart and making sure.
This person's not going to kill that person.
She did the seating chart, and I think she did a very good job. It's a big. There's a lot of people coming. It's a big wedding, and she did a really great job of making sure everyone's at a good table. But
And what did you do? You didn't show up in a suit?
I don't do anything. I'm useless. Well, you know, when we got engaged, she said, you know, we're going to hire a wedding planner. I said, great. And she said, I don't want you to have to worry about this. You can just show up. And I was like, I want to support that decision.
My name is Chris Hardwick.
Yeah, exactly. I guess I should have fought harder. Like, no, but you know,
Right.
I didn't.
But you trust it's gonna look good.
Yeah. It's going to be amazing, and the wedding planner is great, and Nicotero's team is making up zombie. They're going to be zombie servers there, so it should be.
I love it. I love it.
It should be really fun. Yeah, it should be fun.
That's fun.
I'm excited about it. But it's so good to see you, and it was great hanging out with you at Comic-Con.
You too.
Was it the Comic-Con this year for you guys was so much different than the previous year?
It was, yeah. Well, first, I wasn't even there last year, which was so that's very different. So it felt like everybody just prepared me for it to be so insane and wild, and I thought it was like pretty, like, it was cool. It was just nice. It was like, yeah, you saw someone dressed in like, but I saw people like dressed like as Tinkerbell or something.
Right.
It wasn't like, some hardcore craziness. You know what I mean? So I think I was prepared for like, oh my God, people are gonna be like ripping my clothes off or something.
Right.
And that didn't happen, and I'm very disappointed.
Very disappointed. Next year, though. There's always next year. But I think it's, when the cast came out, yeah, because Strand, we don't really see Strand until the later part of that season.
Yeah.
And, but instantly, he's a character that I think just really pops because he's mysterious, but he seems in charge. He looks amazing.
Yeah.
And he doesn't seem thrown by everything that's going on.
Right.
When you auditioned for the show, did they give you any background at all? And they're like, well, just
go for it.
Yeah. or did they? What did they tell you about?
Dave Erickson said to me, I had a phone call with him, and he said, and this is after I already read the sides. I read the sides, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting guy, and I don't know, he seems to be well dressed, and affluent in some way. And then Dave Erickson said, well, he's a millionaire, and he is a self-made man, and he has a daughter named Abigail. And I thought, okay, and possibly like a wife that's like on a boat or something like that. So whatever it was like they were, in their minds, they were thinking boat, Abigail, someone I love. But there was mystery to it. So I'm just playing like in the moment. I'm just playing, okay, even when I saw the scene with Nick, I had no idea why. And I feel like, honestly, I was like looking at him even as an actor because he's got a little bit of a limp and things. I'm like, why does he got a limp? I had no idea he got hit by a car in episode 1. Yeah, but like, so so I'm just really, everything is just in the moment and just really dealing with what this is. And I think Frank and I just, as we got to know each other too, it was really interesting to watch the way we became sort of buddies, as actors and as characters too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you work with them at all on the evolution of Strand, or did they just tell you like, well, this is what's going to happen?
You know what? They met with they're respectful, so they meet with you. You go to the writers' room. I think last August or something. And I guess after they had some handle on where they were going, and they said, well, how do you feel about Abigail being a man? I said, okay, cool, great. And they talked about, complications of relationships, things like that, but still left it very open in a way. And I think that what they also do, which is really cool, is anytime there's we have a script reading, I can always give, thoughts and just say, oh, I'm not sure about that, or does that make sense that Strand is this, or I want to be very clear about where we're going with the arc of the character. Right. So Dave and his team, they're always very open to that, and they'll do a rewrite, so they're cool.
Tell me what you think about. Do you think it's do you like the idea that it's a presentation of a same-sex couple that's just incidental?
Yeah, that's exactly. I love that it's like such a subplot. It's not even about that.
Not even about that at all.
Nah, these two people are kind of like hustlers, con men, and they also had a relationship, and then they move on.
Because I think that.
Well, then I blow his brains out.
With a gun.
Well, because that's what happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. What? No, what?
What were you talking about? No, I was talking about. What were you talking about? No, you were. But you. No, but because I think we've come a long way in entertainment and television, and I know it's still not perfect, and there's still a long way to go. But I think it's nice when the sexuality isn't the defining thing in the character or the relationship. It's like, oh well, this just happens to be, but they're characters, they're human, and this is the intricacy of their relationship that has nothing to do with that.
Exactly. Kim Dixon and I we talked about the idea that when she comes in to see Strand in bed with Abigail and he's like nursing him, there's no mention whatsoever, and these characters have gotten to know each other for the past few weeks or so, and all of a sudden she knows something else, and that's it. But it's just they just keep moving on. So I think I love the idea of the way Strand was set up, that he's so complicated and he's such, he keeps surprising people.
Right.
And then the next thing you know is about this relationship that he has. And it's just like, okay, that's just one other thing you get to know about him. But does that all of a sudden make it the defining factor of him? No, because you know so much more. He's cut a rope. He's been horrible with children. He's
scammed people.
He's scammed people.
These great credit card scams.
Exactly. I think those are larger themes that I think that he's probably even more.
Do you trust him?
It's a strange thing. I think you always have to trust the character that you're playing in some strange way. You get into his mindset and you think, I understand this dude in some weird, dark way. I understand his pulse and his heart. And I always try to believe, I think every actor, you almost try to believe that your character is out for good.
Right.
I think even if you're playing the most dastardly human being, you think, yeah, but they're doing it for a good reason.
Have you ever played a character where it was difficult for you to find an emotional way into them?
No, because I think usually then I don't even take those roles. Then I feel like if I can't get some sort of idea about him, honestly, Victor Strand was a character I was a bit more afraid of because I thought like I'm not. It's so complex. It's exciting and dark, but I'm not even sure. Even the way he was written in the first episode, I couldn't tell if he was a good guy or bad guy. But I was excited about it and a little terrified of it. You know what I mean? Just like, how is this going to all pan out? I have no idea.
I still don't know if he's a good guy or bad guy. I still don't know. I feel like at the core of it, he's a good guy, but I also feel like we've only kind of seen in flashback some of the things that he's done that have been less than trustworthy. So maybe they're...
I think it's a weird thing. I think the idea that we're always trying to decide whether a person is a good guy or a bad guy, I think already that's where the argument is. Because I think, so you can look like Jim Jones,
right.
And think, Jim Jones, he set out to do good. He was a pastor, et cetera, and then he did some horrible things, like, basically killed his whole compound.
Right.
But then you have like, you have someone like, I believe someone like, whatever people want to say about, and I'm not going to get political, but people want to say anything about Donald Trump, I think in his heart, I think in everyone's heart, truly, I like to believe that people are out to do good.
Yeah, it's not like people don't wake up in the morning and wring their hands and go, I'm going to unleash evil on the world today.
I'm going to say some crazy things. I think people, they're trying to go from their life experience and try to do good in the world.
Right.
And then it's all the complications and the things that go in between it that make a person, make it a good or bad decision.
Right. And also, people in general are more complex than just are they good.
I think so too.
Bad?
Yeah, but I'm a bit more of a Pollyanna in that way. I really do believe that all people at the essence are good, and then through your life experience and then challenges and things like that you have the power to be completely horrific.
I like to believe that all people are good, and almost every day social media works real hard to change that opinion. Every day
you wake up on Twitter, it's like,
my God.
You know.
Yeah, just or just like on Facebook, it's just the people. I don't know. People come out of the woodwork and they're like, "Oh no, stop! Stop trying to change my opinion of the goodness of mankind."
But I think these people are like in basements of their parents' house or something like that, and they're just like seeing how sick and twisted.
I think alarmingly they're not. I think they are people that you, because it's there's so much escapism with it because it really does create this system where it's a very interesting sociological experiment where you go, what happens when human beings don't have to assume any responsibility for their actions?
Yeah.
What do people become?
Yeah.
And, I do believe that a lot of it is vapor. I think a lot of it's just venting. I think a lot of it's just taking other frustration and venting at things. And I don't think a large percentage of people really mean necessarily the
Do you think
things
that
they
they just
say.
want to be heard in some way?
Yes.
They want someone to respond to it in some way?
Well, I think it's, everyone wants to feel significant in some way, and everyone needs attention. Everyone needs to connect.
Yeah.
And I think at a certain point, it just becomes like the misbehaving child. It's like, well, if I don't get attention by being good, I'm just going to wreck the fucking place
Exactly.
and then get attention.
And you're going to love me at some point.
You're going to
yeah.
have to deal with me.
Yeah.
I'm going to get attention from you at some point. And I also think there's a really interesting analogy between the way people conduct their social media lives and the news media.
Yeah.
And that the news media uses those, fear tactics and shock tactics, and they speak a lot in superlatives of this is the worst thing or this is the most. And I think because people now are news feeds on social media, they employ the same tactics. So they don't just not like a movie. They fucking hate the fucking worst. It's worse than Hitler.
They want a banner. So you can they want also, but isn't that just symptomatic of like a lot of social media? People just I want you to acknowledge me. I want likes.
Yeah.
I want to feel that I'm worthy. I have value.
Validation.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's validation in a system that's a very weird way to get validated. Well, how is your social media? How have things changed for you since this show?
Well, more than anything, I've always been a bit. I'm a private person, but I like to. I share things that I think people may be interested. I try to be inspirational. I try to have some fun, but also just try to keep it I try to keep it light. I mean, honestly, a lot of times people want me to respond in some way to some of the ills of the things that are going on in the world. And I feel like I always make a conscious choice. It's like, yeah, I could respond and just say like, oh yeah, this is an issue with race or politics or things like that. But I feel like it's more productive actually for me that I use it as a medium. I'm like, if people are listening to what I have to say, I'll put up something to counterbalance that, something about love or about, investigating, your self-worth or something like that. You know what I mean? And like I say, I always go back to, I'm a bit of a Pollyanna in that way. I really feel like I just try to be very conscious of like what I'm putting out into the universe, and hopefully it's something positive.
Yeah, I think that's a constructive way to use social media, and I think that when people tweet things in their minds, they check a box like, yeah, I did something good today. It's like, well, you didn't really
people
do
think that
anything.
They marched or something,
Yeah,
or they did so you sit down with the system. No, they just put out a tweet.
Right.
That's not really doing anything.
It's like yelling in your car, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yelling to no one, exactly.
But I think this approach of actually trying to spread positivity, because I really do try to do the same thing, and I get a lot of
you do. I follow you. Yeah.
I get a lot of shit for it, especially because it's like on Talking Dead. I don't go, well, these were my 5 problems with this episode. It's like,
Right.
yeah, no, but there's cynicism everywhere.
Yeah.
And, it's not about. There's no directive from the network. It's like, you have to do this. Like,
Right.
if you want negativity, it's not hard to find.
Right,
So
exactly,
why can we
exactly.
not? Happiness is such a choice, and it takes work.
Yeah, that's the truth.
You have to put it out. So I appreciate this approach.
Yeah,
I
man.
really appreciate this approach. Were you always that way, or did you have to learn to be that way?
I've always been that way. Actually, I think I've always been that way. I feel like I've been. I'm just really conscious of like what I put out into the universe. I think whether it's the choices that I make in my career and the things that I want to do, I'm very conscious of that. I feel like it's like it is a responsibility as well. I mean, I don't know where that comes from, whether my parents instilled that in me or where I come from or whatever, but I feel like it's like we can be very conscious about what we're putting into the universe, so why not?
Right.
I'm just not the willy-nilly kind of person. So I think that whether I'm on, and I'm not on everything. I'm like, more than anything, I really enjoy Instagram because a picture is worth 1,000.
Of course.
Or 1,000,000.
Yes.
Or 100,000 likes.
100,000 likes?
No,
Like this picture.
But I'm not obsessed with the likes though. And people are like, I may post something and people are like, oh my God, did you read the comments? And I'm like, no. Like, and then they're weird. They're like, and then some fans can get a little weird. Like, oh, you're not responding. I'm like, oh, I didn't know it was about that part of engagement, but I can do that here and there. But it's like, I can't sit around engaging.
Don't read the comments because you'll get 100 really nice comments, and someone will just say something in all caps that's really it just makes you feel bad for humanity,
Right?
And then you can only focus on that one thing. It's bad. But I think people always need some sort of a scale or a metric or something.
Yeah.
Because it's so difficult to tell if things that you're doing are having any effect, and so that's obviously why people get obsessed with that stuff. But it really doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't really mean any. Like, what does it really mean?
Exactly. The one thing I do, I always respond to kindness when someone says something really nice or something like that, or I don't know. Sometimes I'll if like, and I don't hopefully don't get all of a sudden all these requests, but sometimes they're like, "Oh, it'd be really nice if Colman said happy birthday to me." I'm like, that takes a second.
Sure.
So I'm like, "Happy birthday!" I'll even send a video.
Oh, that's
now
nice.
I'm going to get bombarded by everyone asking for their birthdays now. But I think it's nice if I can engage and I have a moment and I'm sitting there, at Starbucks having a coffee, I'll do it.
Well, how did you develop? I mean, this is such an interesting point of view for an actor, because acting can be such a this idea of setting out to get up in front of people and be a performer, and I think there's a lot of it there's a lot of attention involved, and there's a lot of like, I need. There are weird needs that you have for attention or validation or whatever, and in a similar way, I think what we're talking about. So how do you how do you not have all that stuff?
You know what? I think it's because I don't know. I've always been I don't know. I guess basically I've been addicted to the craft of being a craftsman, and it's all about the work for me. And so my career started out in the theater. So I'm really a person who really likes the engagement of being in a dark room and. That sounds weird already. But being in this dark space,
of course,
and sharing these stories and having this engagement with another person. So I'm really interested in that. And in my television and film career, there's not so much of that with engagement. You get that when you go to Comic-Con and you have the fans and the friends. And so I actually don't have a problem with engaging with people. I have no problem with going out and taking a selfie. If I see 500 people there, I'm like, now I can't do 500 people, but we can do one big one.
Right.
And you can tag yourself.
Right.
But I think that is actually important, actually, that there's you have to. It's just the medium is set up that way that you have to have that engagement,
right?
And I think it's a healthy engagement to have too. I don't want to be so removed. Actually, it's like I've actually had. I don't know if this is part answering the question, but I had a conversation with some friends where especially when on a show like Fear the Walking Dead, where all of a sudden there's a lot of attention. And I live in New York City, and I'm not a person that it feels like I want to be, hiding myself all the time.
Right.
I think part of being an artist is also being out there in the world. I don't want to be just being in a, in a car or something like that. I like getting the subway. I like seeing people and stepping in piss on the street. Well,
the reason I know, but I know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
You're talking about real human experiences.
Exactly. I want to have real human experiences. I don't want to be sheltered from that. And I think that's what feeds me as an artist. And so I actively make sure that I'm still part of society and showing up and being there.
Because if you're isolated, then
you can't create.
How can you connect?
I think you can't. I think you can't. I think we've seen certain artists. I think I won't name any names, but you see certain artists that may have made a career off of their engagement, whether being a comedian and being out there in the streets and with people, and all of a sudden they reach the echelons of society and they're so removed from it they can't go to the corner store and get those stories from the bodega anymore. They have to create this whole other thing and become this other thing that's so far away from what they started out to do.
Right.
And I like the idea of having that engagement, and I constantly want it.
And is it, do people on the streets of New York, because I feel like New York's one of those places where unless you get near the more touristy spots, people in New York, by and large, they kind of don't get, they're just there to go from point A to point B, do their job, not really.
They are until you're on Fear the Walking Dead. And then they run out of restaurants and leave their wife and kid, and they come out to get a selfie because they're like, first of all, I'm sure they're like, I can't believe Victor Strand is walking down the street in his gym clothes. So they're excited, and so they're really excited. And so that happened to me once we got back from Mexico, and I just walked my usual walk, which is about 10 blocks to go to the gym, and I got stopped 12 times, and I thought, oh wow, I forgot that
10 blocks.
Yeah.
10 blocks to walk to the gym.
I know, isn't that crazy? I know you live in LA. You're like, what?
I know.
Yeah.
Well, an LA block though is not really the same.
Right,
an LA block is kind of iffy.
Right.
You don't want to walk too much in LA.
People look at me, and wherever I stay in LA, I try to stay in neighborhoods where I can walk around. I can walk to a Whole Foods or something like that.
Yeah.
But and people look at me like I'm crazy. Like, why are you walking?
No, I love walking in New York. It's such a nice. It feels so good.
Yeah.
To just go. Oh yeah, 20 blocks is no big deal.
It's great. It's so perfect. Yeah, it's great.
Well, are you guys? You're shooting now?
We start shooting again in December.
You start shooting. Oh, so you have some time off. Mm-hmm. But I know you're working on a play.
Yeah, I'm directing.
And then Birth of a Nation comes out in October.
I'm directing a play at the Geffen right now called Barbecue, and it's a dark satire about addiction, family, and Hollywood. And it stars Francis Fisher and Dale Dickey. Dale Dickey is in my play.
And how did you?
She just wanted to do it. She, the breakdown went out to agents, and she said, I really want to do this play. Dale Dickey is someone who I think, hands down, one of the best actresses in the world. She, I was a fan of hers when I saw Winter's Bone, and I thought, who is that? Who's embodying all of that? With that beautiful character, well-lived face, and so she came in to meet with me and wanted to do this play, and I thought, hey, you could do whatever you want. You could direct the play if you like.
Do you direct? No. Do you? Are you conscious to? Do you direct her? Do you think you can direct her well, or you're like, well, you just do what you want, or do you speak up?
I think you lay the framework and the foundation. I think a good director, you lay the framework, foundation, and set your actors free in that way. As long as they have these places where they can go and give them some great structure. And so I do give her direction. I give her direction, and just to but it's all what she's bringing. But I ask my actors to bring everything they can to the table and be a collaborator with me. It's never just like I have all the ideas.
Sure.
It's like, no, I'm the kind of director that'll say there's a lot of things I don't know, and we're going to discover together. And I think it's healthy. That's what the way I've always been creating things. It's like you have to create with the spirit of I feel like I'm going to get found out that I don't know everything. They're going to find out that I have no idea what I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah, but I feel like you should always feel that way. It feels liberating. You feel like a kid. You feel like the gods will come and rain down and sprinkle something special on it because of that.
What's your favorite? What do you like about directing theater?
I've always had a big mouth. And I think about and I always have opinions. And I've always, but I've never, even as an actor, I've never just looked at the micro of being an actor. I've always looked at what exactly was happening in the whole production. So that's what I'm even doing on Fear the Walking Dead. I'm always looking at the whole. And so I've been directing since about 1998 when I was directing in San Francisco, and I was known more as an actor-director. And then I moved to New York, and I was more actor, director, and then writer as well. So, but directing is a muscle I love to use because I just love bringing things together. I in my own private life, I throw great parties, and I think that's what basically I think that's what a director does. You bring all the elements of having a great party. You get the good caterer, you get the good performers, you get great conversationalists, and then you mix them all together and you make some magic.
But when you're doing theater specifically, do you like doing an original work, or do you like kind of tackling something that's been done a bunch of times before and putting your own spin on it?
New work is really exciting because I think it's at the idea of creating something that was never there is interesting to me. Like we're going to create a whole new piece of theater. This piece in particular came from was at the Public Theater in New York, and I was actually involved in it as an actor in a few of the early workshops, and so I was able to all of a sudden now to see this and sit in the director's chair with this and really help articulate how can this be done with these actors at this time, and how it is significant to to what's happening, whether it's in entertainment, whether it's with our climate about race, you know what I mean? Because it's saying so many things about that, or dealing with addiction. So I like to just set up the room. If anything, I do know my strengths of a director. I actually find that privately, I would always tell people I think I'm a stronger director than I am an actor. I think for me it goes director, writer, actor.
Oh wow! So acting is like the third thing in the list.
As an actor, I feel like it's something because I've been doing it for 25 years. Like I know how to access certain things and have a certain tool set where I can figure out these things pretty in a great way. Hopefully in a complex way. But as a director as well, I always feel like I'm starting, because you're really always starting from zero, it seems. You're like, every process is going to be brand new because the play demands that, whether you're working on a musical or a play, a new work, a classic work. But you're constantly shifting and you're constantly growing, and in your actors and what they bring into the room, you're constantly shifting. So that's what I find exciting about it. And I feel like my skill set is set for that in a way, because I really know how to, I have 10 actors in this play. And so you're almost, in a strange way, you become 10 therapists. You have to figure out exactly what this actor needs, how they can get to the work. Okay, that one is very far ahead in the process. Okay, I need to bring this up. It's really your sort of your painting, your conducting. You're doing many things, and I feel like that's I think that some people are just set that way. I feel like I'm constantly Noel over here will tell you, I'm constantly working on like 5 or 6 things at one time.
Oh, you do multitasking.
Yeah, because that's just the way my brain works. That's the way I actually get things done. If someone just tells me, oh, I'm just focusing on this television show right now, I think I'd be a little like, lax and a little lazy maybe. But if I have to do that and I have 2 outlines due on a couple plays and pre-production of something I'm directing, I'll get everything done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you want to transition in directing film and television?
I'm very interested in, I just became curious in directing television, actually. Just watching the way the mechanics of like a show like Fear the Walking Dead works with all its components is exciting for me. The idea of like harnessing all of that and telling a good story is very fascinating. I've been very interested in camera work. Mm-hmm. Even the way, the way I've come into the theater, the way I've come into this art form, and many of these art forms were by doing. I didn't have any formal training. I didn't go to like Juilliard or NYU or anything. I learned by working. And so I've been learning a lot, even just being on set with Fear the Walking Dead. And even recently, this film that I just did in New York, I'm constantly watching the way and listening. I find myself, I'm always like eavesdropping on conversations between the DP and the director and figuring, my director always notices that every director notices that I'm usually standing right behind them. Like, so if they're calling Colman to set, they're like, oh, we need Colman on set. You're like, oh, he's actually right here. Because I'm just fascinated with what's going on. You know what I mean? Once again, I'm never just thinking as an actor. I'm constantly just looking at all of the departments and how it's working. And so now I have a fascination with directing television.
Yeah, well, because with theater, you're basically seeing, the audience is seeing everything to a degree. But when you direct film or television, it's a different type of storytelling, right? Because you're telling the audience what to pay attention to.
Exactly.
You're focusing them.
Yeah. And even when I go into ADR sessions, I'm finding I'm constantly watching, well, why did the editor make the choice to now have that dialogue off screen and it's focused on that actor here? And just trying to get into, I just have questions. Like, I'm trying to figure out why, because that doesn't make sense to me why it would be cut that way. But it makes sense emotionally to someone else. Someone says, this makes sense to tell the story this way. So I direct from a place and I act from a place and write from a place with a lot of questions.
Right.
And I think that that's why I get involved in I'm like, oh, wow. I think once I've answered a lot of questions in something, I feel like, okay, I kind of got a handle on that. But now I'm just like, what's that other new thing? That's interesting. Maybe I'm going to turn out to be a DP or something. I have no idea.
But you must have a story that's just sort of festering inside somewhere that needs to come out.
I do. I actually do right now. I actually do. My story that I need to come out is to tell James Baldwin's story.
Tell me about James Baldwin.
James Baldwin is one of the most formidable thinkers, writers, revolutionaries, playwright, writer, thinker that America has ever produced. And I think he's truly the greatest. And for a long time, I can say it because I actually just got an agreement to work on one of his biographies, and because I'm very interested in telling his story, and I think it should be told. I'm very interested in telling these extraordinary human being stories in a way that is not like cradle to grave, in a way that is really just really getting to the essence of their writing, about their activism. Whether you take a story like Maya Angelou's story, I feel like the idea of boiling someone's story down to 2 hours is just not enough for me these days. I feel like, especially with so many platforms, I'm like, why not a 10-part miniseries on this extraordinary human being's life? Whether you take Muhammad Ali's life, and I'm like, that's an enormous life. Right? Wouldn't it be interesting to say, let's not boil it down to 2.5 hours. Let's make this an event. Because and I think that we'll find all the crossroads of other human beings in their event, that are stirring our political consciousness, our social consciousness, you name it. So I think that those things, and I think because we are, I don't know, always looking for answers, and we always have to go back in the history books to find out who we are today. So I think it's interesting. So I want to tell stories like that. I want to tell James Baldwin stories. I want to tell stories about Muhammad Ali. I want to tell stories about Maya Angelou.
Scripted stories or like documentary stories?
Scripted stories.
Because now is the perfect time to do, everyone goes nuts for this 6 to 8 part miniseries. Yeah. 10 episodes.
Yeah.
You get an amazing cast.
That's
it's like,
what I want.
Okay, welcome. It's like doing a movie.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. exactly. So I'm going to call on you. I think you should be in one of them too.
What?
Yeah,
I would. No one ever asked. Although you may get me on set and be like, "Oh, this is why he doesn't act in things a lot. This is why people don't ever ask him to do this kind of
Really,
thing."
but I think that you're like so. But yeah, what I get from you, I always think you're such a generous human being. Just being in the room with you, hearing that you're such a generous spirit, I always think that translates into. It just translates if people just know that that's at the core. That's who you are.
It's a very forgiving way to. I appreciate that.
Sure.
But I would love to. I mean, this is the kind of thing where the more you talk about it, the more momentum it'll get, and I feel like someone will do it. I mean, like I
hope so.
I think you'll. This seems completely achievable to me.
I hope so. I've been a playwright for years too. I've written. I've had 3 plays published, 4 plays published, and I'm very interested in telling stories and being a storyteller. And so whether that means in the theater or film or television, and a lot of times I'm like, because I haven't said that I wanted to direct film, it doesn't mean that that's not something I'm interested in. I just didn't know exactly what the project is.
Right.
But I think no matter what, I'm just really interested in telling stories. And I think that I've always been... I teach at times as well, and I'm always inspiring students to not just think about being an actor, to be a storyteller, to have more agency in your career, to not just sit back and just say that that's just who you are, being an actor. But if you're a storyteller, you're a storyteller, and I really believe that it crosses mediums. You know, I don't believe there should be one. People always say, "Well, what do you like to do better?" I'm like, actually, I like to tell stories. I don't have to be in front of the camera. I just like whatever way I can help facilitate. I've been a producer. I used to produce theater. That's when I first met a lot of my close friends in San Francisco when I was producing theater, is like, for $500.
Yeah.
You know? But like, I just want to get the stories out there.
That's a very, I think that's very indicative of someone with a strong theater background. It's like you do whatever you can do to get the thing made.
Yeah.
If you have to pull the rope on the curtain, or you're acting in it, or you're working concessions, it's like everyone, a small team of people bands together to just get this thing out into the world.
And it's not about being seen. It's not about all these other things that I think, these other tropes that people get caught up in terms of like what they think being a creative or actor is. A lot of times people see the end result. They see you on a red carpet or something and think that, oh, that's what being an actor is. You're like, no, that's part of the work of the actor.
Right.
But it's not like, that's not actually why I didn't get into this business to be on red carpets.
It's so interesting.
Although I do love really great clothes.
I mean, they're nice. Yeah, they're nice. Yeah,
exactly.
Send you stuff, shoes.
Send me things.
But I do think what you're describing is a good quality of a leader, which I think is what translates to Strand, and I think is kind of one of the underlying things of like what makes a person magnetic. And I think it's they're engaging because they want to be, not because they need to be. You know what I mean? Like Strand doesn't need any. He doesn't. I mean, nuance. Yes, everyone needs someone. But he doesn't. It doesn't seem like he's going to do what he's going to do. Yeah, and you can be along for that, or you don't have to be. Yeah, and I think that's what's sort of like compelling about a character or a person. It's like they don't necessarily. There's no desperation. They don't need you.
Chris, you're speaking on something. You just made me realize something, because the genesis of even my self-tape audition for Strand, I was in that place in my career, to be very honest, where I felt like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. You know what? I'm going to self-tape this. This is going to be self-taped and send it off. I'm like, this is what I think about the character. I don't need anything. I don't need anything from. If you want to work with me, this is what I'm going to bring. I'm going to bring you all these colors and things like that. I'm not going to get these notes from the casting director saying, oh, he's this way. I'm like, this is going to be my creation of it, and I'm going to leave it at that. Right. And you either want this or not. It was just one of those moments. And actually, that moment was the moment I booked the show. There was no callbacks and network and all those other hoops that actors usually go through. It was one of those moments where it's like, oh, okay, that's what I want or not.
I've always had a little theory about that and why it is that way, and I think it probably is just some ancient biological thing that if you think, as a species we have to survive. Yeah. And so when you're picking a community, or where you're picking people to align yourself with to hopefully pass your DNA down to survive, if someone needs something, that means they're not getting something. Yeah. And so
they seem desperate.
They're like, logically, maybe they don't have the right thing to survive or to propagate those genes. But an entity who doesn't need anything, it's like, oh, well, they've got everything covered.
Yeah.
That's probably the safest. But they know something I don't know.
Yeah.
I need
And
to
you're
know
drawn
what
to
that
that.
is. You're drawn to that. Yeah. On a biological level, you're drawn to that.
That's it. I think you're absolutely right. I think that when we're in that state and we feel so, that we have agency in the world.
Right.
People are drawn to that. But also you get the bloodsuckers as well. They want to suck all the blood. And they want to take it all. They want to take it all.
Of course.
But, you want to align yourself with people who like you, and I think that's what like Strand has with Madison. They look at each other, they sort of sniffed each other out and they're like, we're made of the same stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of not into it, but I'm really into it at the same time.
Well, survivors recognize other survivors.
Yeah.
They really do. Like,
It's
they can
true.
tell, okay, yeah, because her character, there's definitely some dark thing, something fucked up in her past. Because she's just too okay with everything.
Yeah, she'll break something over someone's head and so let's go get some breakfast.
Well, I mean, just in dealing, with a son who's had such horrible addiction problems, and all of the darkness seems so familiar to her.
Yeah.
That those two characters just you're right. They just recognize each other.
Yeah, immediately from Jump Street, and it's one of those things where they're like, it's exciting, it's fun, it's weird, and it's dark all at the same time. And it's a little sexy.
It is. Yeah, it is. They definitely have some kind of a connection, and that doesn't even necessarily have to be a romantic connection. It's just a connection.
Yeah.
And
Sexy,
if it is
sexy is sexy.
If it is, great. If not, great too.
Right. But isn't that thing about attraction? That attraction is complicated.
Of
you know what
course.
I mean? And just the idea that these two people who may think that they have nothing in common, but they're thrown together at the apocalypse, and it's something you're like, oh, that's something that's really you're attracted to that.
Sure.
Whatever that is.
Well, I mean, it's I think sometimes this idea of what makes people alike and not alike. I mean, I think. There are external things that are very accidental. Like, oh, this person likes Wheaties and this person likes Cheerios. They're so different. It's like, well, but the underlying thing that makes them pick either one of those things might be identical. You know, their underlying motivations are the way that why they make the choices they make, or what what drives them.
Yeah.
All the other stuff is really just kind of accidental and not and I don't think that really means anything. I don't think people have to like the same things to be to get along or be attracted to one another.
Yeah.
But it helps in it helps in long-term relationships to kind of like the same things. How long have you been? Are you married now?
I'm in a relationship.
You're in a
Yes.
relationship
Yes,
now.
yes,
And
yes.
how long have you been together?
We've been together for 11 years.
11 years.
Yes.
So what is
I'm
this?
sort of in a relationship.
What
now.
is this? You're still in the honeymoon
Yeah,
phase.
yeah.
The first 11 years, they say, if you can make it through that. What's a key to a good, healthy relationship over the long term?
I think laughter. I think being on the ride to watch this person grow and knowing that you're going to grow and how you're going to evolve and being along for the ride. And I think hopefully having a good time the whole time, honestly. But just like being along for the ride that this person's going to change and grow.
Right.
Like you're about to
Days.
do your days into your nuptials.
Yes.
And it's like you're going to be involved. That's what someone told me before. They're like, this couple is like 70 years old, and they're like, oh, just know that this person's going to go through changes and going to become something different. And you have to also just extend yourself. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to go along for the ride. That person's going to have different needs today that have nothing to do with me. You got to keep your own ego out of it. You're like,
Right.
You're going to grow. They're going to grow. But you're going to keep your ego out of it. And you're like, okay, cool. And trust also. I think honestly, with most relationships in the world. But this is my thought. But I think a lot of people are thinking like this, that I think you can't hold anyone tight. You can't hold it and hope, please, I hope to God that you're mine. I'm going to control this whole thing. I think you got to hold it with your hand open and trust that, hey, they may slip through a little bit in some way, whatever. But who knows? If they come back, they come back. If they go through your hands, they go through your hands, and life goes on. You grow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You hope that you're together forever.
Of course.
But life is life.
Yeah,
That's my advice to you that I'm giving you right before you.
That's life. It's not. Well, what's interesting is that, and although this, I don't want anyone to misconstrue my point of this, but it made me think. What you were saying made me think of this. Someone said something really amazing to me once. So they said, it's about the having, not about the keeping. We get so tied to. I have to own all this stuff forever. And it's like, well, maybe you could just enjoy the time that you have that stuff.
Yeah.
And
Be in the moment.
And having it. Yeah, I think that's really just a more complicated way of saying be in the moment.
Yeah.
But, that being said.
But that's a hard thing for most people to do because I think we're just kind of constantly set up to like think about the future and think about all the other stuff you're trying to build up instead of just thinking, this is what it is today.
Yeah,
and
well,
enjoy today.
There's no, I mean, if you need any, I think, I don't know if the world is any worse than it's ever been. We're more aware of it now because of social media and because of the internet and because of how much media
we can
and
access
shit
it
we're
immediately,
just cramming into our heads, so we're seeing all of it in real time.
Yeah,
and it's really crazy. And I don't know if we're any worse off than we were before, but the fact that people can't live in the present, and if you need any more evidence, like watching people take pictures the whole time or video the whole time, something. They're not living in the moment. They're going, well, I'm capturing this for a future time that they're never going to look at.
I don't understand that. When you see people and they're standing there, that's what happened at Comic-Con. It's like, and I wanted to tell people, I'm like, just be here. Right. It's okay. And also to know that their camera is going to get this and you can actually access it anytime you want. You don't have to stand there with your phone watching, recording this. I think we're just so attached to it. But I'm so old school in that way. I think, I'm 46 years old, so I'm from a generation like this is still new stuff to me.
Sure.
So I'm still so analog that I'm not really built that way. I'm not going to sit, at a concert or an interview or something and have my phone on. I'm like, no, I'll trust it the moment. It's going to be awesome. This is great. And it's for me. Who are you going to share that with? Is it for your mother? I don't know. But if it's for your mom, but trust me, we have a 3-camera crew back there capturing this. It's going to be probably a little bit better and better edited than your phone.
And I've noticed that because listen, I'm guilty of it too. I saw Radiohead the other night. I took some video at the Radiohead concert, but I know that when I've watched it back, I don't feel the same as I did when I was there. I'm like, oh yeah, I was there. Oh yeah, I remember that. Like I'm not as connected to it.
Right.
It's kind of nice, but but just sort of collecting all these things, I don't know if it. I feel like we're just deferring our enjoyment to a time that we're never actually going to use.
It's true, unless the person dies or something.
Of course.
Yeah, right.
I think,
no, I always go back.
You're right.
Maybe it is good I'm on a show like Fear the Walking Dead because I'm always talking about death. But I think because it's inevitable. But I do think that I did have I admit that I took some from a Prince concert, like the last when he did the last concert here in LA at the Forum.
Now you're probably happy you have it.
Yeah, I'm like I have it, and it's like, and I look at it, I'm like, wow, yeah, that was that last moment.
It's so fucked up because you never, you just don't know what's going on with people. I mean, I'm sure it's easy for people to go, oh, Prince is a genius. What? How could he? I mean, he could play any instrument. He's one of the greatest performers in the history of performance.
Yeah.
And look at all these problems he was having that we didn't know about.
Because he was human, and that devastated me. But also, that's also the thing that we always do to these, larger than life human beings. I think that we don't give them a break to be human in a way, like with Michael Jackson or Whitney Houston, or I feel like we've lost so many people in our generation that are like of our times, like the voice of our times,
right?
The performer of our times. And it's devastating. But each time you find out, when you go more into their private lives, you're like, they weren't able, which is maybe this is why I'm so vigilant about always being in touch with people. Because I think that when you're so far removed and people don't allow you to be human anymore, I'm sure there's pressures to that in some way, that we that are unimaginable to us,
Right.
And so I think that. And also, I think that just human contact is just very important. I think that these people lacked that. And, just being able to, the idea of Prince riding his bike around the Paisley Park compound or riding around his neighborhood and people, it's like that's the most he could do. I think he was desperately trying to have that normalcy in his life, but other people couldn't do that, at all. They were constantly being.
Well, some people I think are performers because it can be difficult for them to connect. Mm-hmm. But, just I'm not super comfortable at parties.
Yeah,
I can do stand up for 10,000, 20,000 people, but if I'm at a party with people, I get a little like.
Are you better one-on-one with people?
I can do fine one-on-one once it starts, once it gets going. But I always feel out of place when I'm at a party. I always feel like I don't know, I shouldn't be here. It's weird. I don't know what to say. I don't know. So I think for some people. Maybe they go into a life like that, because they like the art, but also it allows them to express, it allows them to connect with people.
Yeah.
But then, a guy like Prince, especially coming out of the era that he came out of, it's just so isolating. It just feels it just seems so isolating.
Yeah. And then we sort of deify them in a way that they can't be human. I know when Prince came to Philadelphia when I was 16, I was such a huge Prince fan. I think I got in. No, I was 17. It doesn't matter. But no matter what, I drove my 1983 Chevy Chevette around after the Prince concert, after the Love Sexy concert, because I felt like I had to meet him. I had to find out where his hotel was. What was I going to do? But I drove around.
Hey, Prince, I'm Colman.
Like, what am I going to do? Like, that's crazy. But that's what, they sort of bring out in you as well. But why do we also, but it make me think, like, in hindsight, years later, like, why do we give people that much, like, is it a lack in ourselves that we deify these people? He's an artist like anyone else, but say he brought out something in you that you can't.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I think, I think part of our survival is if we don't believe in stuff, then I think it's like, well, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it has to be, I'm not particularly religious. I don't think it has to be religious. I just think, but people need hope. They need to believe in something greater to inspire them to achieve or to feel like anything's possible. And so it's probably just, like Prince was a guy, you see him perform, you're like, oh yeah, I guess anything's possible if that guy can, that guy's this tiny man who can play everything and do everything
and
on stage.
6-inch stilettos. Exactly. That's extraordinary. He's my God. Exactly.
Of course.
He's my
you
Lord and
feel
Savior.
like you got to find that guy and track him down, even if you don't know exactly what it is that you need from him.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, if you had tracked him down, it probably would have been a very disappointing exchange.
It probably would have.
So it's probably better that you didn't track him down.
Exactly. But, I know it's true, because now that when you meet certain people, like, I've had a second engagement with meeting Aretha Franklin, which was actually lovely. But the first time I met Aretha Franklin on the street, and I didn't meet her. I walked by her, and she's going into Christie's. And I'm just some random dude, of course. I realized that it's so crazy. I was just overcome. I was like, Aretha Franklin. Hi, I'm such a huge fan. Hi, oh my God, you're amazing. And she probably looked at this crazy guy, and she ignored me. She looked at me and kept walking.
Right.
And I was like, boo. Oh, I'm hurt.
But from her point of view, she's probably, has happened for decades. And she does, it's just a mode that they go into. But I think as a fan, the best thing that you can do is I found my best experience with people is when I didn't have any expectations for myself.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to get anything from the other person. It was just like, hey, I just want to let you know that I think you're amazing.
Yeah.
And I did that with Catherine O'Hara at some party. She was there, and I went up and was like, sorry to bother you. I just want to tell you I think you're amazing. Have a good night. And she was like, hey, I know who you are. And I was like, what? But those times when I've tried to hang out and expect something, that they just never, because those people don't know what to give.
Yeah, it's so weird. But you have to do this thing. Isn't it like I think when you, the thing that I always try to turn around when people just immediately like, oh my God, he plays Strand. Can I get a selfie? I'm like, when they go straight for the selfie, I'm like, hey, what's your name?
Yeah,
let's
course.
actually have a real connection.
Let's connect a little bit.
Or like somebody, like, I think I was in costume and I was actually, shooting. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't shoot in costume. Oh man, we really want a selfie. I'm like, no, how about this? How about it was this young girl. I'm like, can I give you a hug? Let's have a hug and let's hug it out and talk.
Let's have a human experience.
Let's say that and tell people that what's your name and what are you interested in? What are you doing here? We actually had an exchange. I'm like, yeah, that's better than a selfie.
Yeah, and it's one of my favorite things.
You can Photoshop me in any photo you want.
That's true.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one of my favorite things about this sort of Comic-Con culture is that I think it's a really nice group to have.
Yeah.
It's a nice community to be a part of, and so, when people come up to me, they're really sweet.
Yeah.
And I love talking. I love talking.
You're like the king of Comic-Con though. I just felt like it was nice because I feel like you are such a champion of sort of this the comic book culture and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I feel like you're a great sort of representation.
I just honestly feel like when I was growing up, I was very ashamed of the things that I was into because that sliver of culture was socially ostracized. We didn't have the internet yet. You and I are almost the same age.
Yeah.
And so in the
26, yeah.
Yeah, 27. I was 24. So I can make myself 2 years younger. But and so I always felt like the stuff that I was into was difficult to be very open about because I was constantly ridiculed for chess club or being in the computer lab or whatever it was.
Right.
And so as I got older, I just never wanted people to feel that way. So that's why one of the reasons why I'm so inclusive, because my family moved a lot. I never felt like I fit in, and I just don't want people to feel like they don't fit in. I want people to feel like you fit in, whatever you're into, unless it's murder.
Yeah.
You fit in. Murder nerds not welcome. But everything else, like I always want people to feel like, hey, you know what? Even if I don't fully get what that thing is that you're doing, you're passionate about it, and that's good enough.
Yeah.
So it must be important.
I think that's beautiful. I think it's just, once again, it's a great way to keep extending ourselves as human beings.
Yeah.
Like my nephew actually showed up to 4th of July, and I had the moment of like thinking like, oh, he's always been a bit on the fringe, and I don't know, he's been like this black goth kid and things like that, and he showed up for the first time. He's in I still don't understand it, but is he a furry? He had like a furry costume on.
Oh yeah, he would have been a furry. He was
that a furry?
I mean, what was the costume?
It was I guess
Kigurumi?
He was a wolf kitty.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is that?
That's like a fur. It's like that's in the furry family. I'd have to see the costume to tell you exactly what it is, but it was probably some type of a kigurumi.
Yeah. It was exactly. It was like, and he and his friends, they were all dressed in these fur, and I didn't understand it, but I thought like, I think that these days, and I think because of social media and in many ways, I'm like, there's room for all of that, for everyone who feels that they've been on I was a bona fide, nerd in every single way growing up, and I feel like my time has come.
It has come, because I don't think that's any different. The kigurumi or that expression isn't really any different than like in the 80s where people would do the mohawks with the green and that are not weird to see now. At the time, people would go, what's up with those people, know? But it's the same kind of, it's just that type of expression, and that's just how they feel comfortable.
Right. But I think also don't we need more of that in our world? I feel like I like the idea of like just showing up on a Tuesday morning and someone's dressed in like, some crazy costume.
Well, I think it's so much more accepted now than it was. Mm-hmm. And even though there might be people who go like, "Wow, what is that? What are you guys doing? That's weird. Get out of here." Yeah. I still think by and large, as a culture, people, that is the positive thing the internet has done, is it's essentially localized the world.
Yeah.
The world is a local community now, and you can connect with other people, and then there's kind of something for everyone. And now even if people balk at it, they go, I don't know, I think that's some internet shit kids are doing now. I don't get it.
Right. Right.
But it's not. I don't think people are being run off the road because they're in a wolf costume anymore. So I think it is a good time.
Yeah.
I certainly think there's a long way to go, but I do believe that there is more tolerance for fringe things now than there was when we were growing up.
Absolutely.
But a lot of that is media and like we were talking about before is, every time a character like that all that stuff is incidental.
Yes, exactly.
It's like
exactly because
people are like, it's not a big deal.
It becomes more normal now. Exactly, it becomes more normalized in every single way. I think that's great. I think that's great for everyone who I believe who feel that they're on the fringes of society. Because of media, people are like, oh, that's not so strange.
Right.
Yeah,
what were you into when you said you're a bona fide nerd? What sort were you into when you were in school?
Well, I was into reading.
What? Books?
Reading and writing.
Books?
I was into books. No, I was just into I played. I was on the school newspaper. I played the violin and the tenor sax, and I was just I was into Lego.
Nice.
Hugely into Lego. Yeah, so but I wasn't like I grew up in the inner city of Philadelphia, and you people are usually into basketball or things like that, and that wasn't me at all.
Were the other students accepting of you, or did you get shit?
Well, I got shit. I was always just known as sort of the quiet geek in the back of the classroom,
right?
And I was ridiculed for actually getting good grades as well.
Sure,
because, but people would always like cheat off of me, or I would help people out. But like the idea that being smart was not a good thing in a strange way. Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
Think about the idea of like being having an interest in, I was always known as the teacher's pet too.
Right.
Because I was really interested in what they had going on.
I think that's just a teenage rebellion, right?
Yeah.
I think if if it could be the other way if that felt rebellious.
Yeah.
You know, but I think studying is giving into the system and the structure, and if you're rebelling against that, you don't give a shit, and that means you're
cool and
shaking
edgy.
shit up, and you don't care, and you know. Then at a certain point, you realize, like, oh yeah, that stuff's kind of important. Shit.
Exactly. Oh man, maybe I should have been more like that.
I
dude.
probably should have paid attention a little more. I was really lucky because my parents, you know, I was into all that stuff, and they put me in situations where I could explore that. Yeah. So I think a lot of it also comes from being able to recognize what your kids are into and trying to, you know, inspire them.
That's my parent. My parents were like really interested in all of us. My parents were not artists at all, but they were very interested in their kids. I don't know, expressing themselves. I was always like shyer. I just told someone this the other day, and I hadn't thought about this in years. I had a lisp. It was my S's and my X's. I would say boxes. So I didn't speak a lot. So it was very much. I was someone who just watched a lot.
Someone with such perfect diction as you have now.
Thank you. That's all manufactured. The idea that people are always like, "Oh, we love Victor Strand's voice and the way he speaks. You could read me any bedtime story." It's like I've come a long way, baby.
I'm Victor Strand. You're Madison.
Strand. You like Madison? Could you imagine?
These infected are everywhere. Exactly. Quick, get to my boat.
Let's go, everybody.
I have to find Thomas. Strand?
Exactly.
I swear I'll kill you. He's not really going to kill anybody.
Not with that list. Get that list.
That's really interesting. So that was something that defined you, or at least you think defined you, and you changed that.
Yeah, I think like a kid like me, I had a lot of hurdles to overcome. I think, I grew up very, I always say I grew up in an inner city home that was very nuclear in a way. I grew up with mom, stepfather, and 3 siblings. And I think that, but yet still, we're pretty poor. We're pretty poor. And like I wore my sister's hand-me-down clothes. You know what I mean? I wore her like high top pink Pro-Keds.
Yep.
I was like on that chain. It was like, and I was after my sister. I was like, boo, I will never be cool. So you know what I mean? But also even when it comes to, having a lisp and being shy and things like that, I just had a lot of things, to like overcome in a way. And I think, I remember like, being in high school, I just couldn't wait to get to college. For some reason, I couldn't wait to get to college. And I felt like my life was going to change. And it did, because I really felt like I wanted to be outside of what was the pressures that were put on me, whether it's just being an African-American man in the inner city and the things you're supposed to be. And I thought, I'd go to this university. I went to Temple University, and all of a sudden I'm hanging around all different sorts of walks of life and people and things like that. And I could redefine myself, or I could actually define myself. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so that's when I started taking an interest in, like, whether it's theater, whether it was clothing, the way I expressed myself. I didn't have to dress the way stay in line with the way everyone else was in the neighborhood. I can actually be myself and figure out what that was. You know what I mean? So that was an exciting time. And I think all those things led up to sort of that evolution that we have. And mine happened in college. And then I moved and I lived in San Francisco after that for like 10 years. And you can do nothing but become who you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could be a hippie, you could be a biker, you could be, a thug, whatever you want to be. But you can find a group for that.
Yeah.
So I think,
San Francisco is like the first real world interpretation of the internet. It's like, there's a chat room for everyone.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And I lived in San Francisco in the 90s. But I feel like when I tell people that when I lived in San Francisco and the stories that I have, it's like you would think I was in the 60s.
Right.
But it was very much, politically charged and, just like liberating in every single way when it comes to thought more than anything.
San Francisco is such a wonderful city. I love San Francisco. It's a great place to perform. I love performing there.
I do too, but it's changed a little bit though. But have you felt that it's changed a little bit because of, the .comers and how that's sort of like enveloped San Francisco and sort of driven out the artists. That's actually, I moved part of the wave of actors moving out.
Good, they sort of priced out.
Yeah, we were priced out. So, and I feel like it's like cities have got to do better about how do we keep the artists in the city.
And there's such the socioeconomic division in San Francisco is pretty heartbreaking. I mean,
my God,
you walk through neighborhoods, where the real estate is insane, and you're stepping over people sleeping on the streets,
heroin addicts, you name it. But also it's very. When I tell you, it's very, very liberal, and also with that comes, and I'm a liberal through and through. But of course, I think at some point I'm like, I'm going to sound so un-PC. I'm like, I think it could get a little Republican around here. It's a little too much. It's a little too much people laid out on the street just, dying.
Right.
Because they have the right to lay out in the street and die.
Right.
Like, no, actually, I think we need to take care of them and
give them a little structure.
Give them a little structure.
Right.
So, I'm leaning more towards the middle in San Francisco.
I don't know how to. I don't know. There obviously is a problem. I'm not an expert in San Francisco politics, so I don't know how you solve it. But it's not
it's a huge problem.
But I don't know how you give these people the support that they need and respect them. Respect their rights. You said to do whatever they want, but also give them help. Yeah. Help, because I can't imagine San Francisco is a great place to be out on the streets because it's freezing a lot of the year.
It's kind of unbelievable. I was just there about a year ago, and I was doing a workshop of a play of mine at American Conservatory Theater, which is right on Market Street. And, of course, that's right where I think, Twitter has headquarters.
Yeah.
Facebook, they're all around there. And then you see this all – really, I was actually shocked for the first, and I live in New York, and it takes a lot to shock me. But I was just shocked where I was stepping over people. I was watching people putting a needle in on the street, walking by these lovely people going into their job at Twitter, and I just thought this isn't normal, people. This isn't normal. We've got to make, even as these things are building, you've got to figure out how do we take care of this problem here,
right? And
not just say it's a problem, but how do we include it in the planning of this, whether it's social services, you name it. Job creation, you name it. I feel like there's some plan that can happen that is about everyone's economic growth in a way, and also I don't know, there's some rehabilitation that can happen if they are interested in it in some way. But the idea of honestly, it's buck wild on 6th and Market Street. It's the most shocking block I think in America.
Yeah, because I don't, my concern isn't the oh my gosh, they're ruining the real estate. It's more like they're people, and how do you help them? How do you give them the ability to make the choice to get the help that they need?
Exactly.
And I don't know the answer.
And why not, Chris? We need to fix the world here on this podcast.
I'm not the mayor of San Francisco. I don't know. I wasn't on the ballot this year. I don't live there. Apparently that counts against you. Also not in politics. That was not helpful. I don't have a lot of answers for things.
I'm very disappointed, Chris.
I know, and listen, when you come back next time, I will solve all of the
Great.
But you're working on this play about addiction.
Yeah.
And so what is that? What have you learned about that?
Well, I think I know I've experienced people in my life who've had addiction problems as well, and also looking at the surreal worlds that they're living in when dealing with that. Even people who are some that are very close to me, and the repetition of it, and trying to find the answers, how to break the chain of it. And I think that's also what thematically in this play. But it's also a bit of a satire, so it's really skewered up, and it's really it's happening fast and furious, and it's really actually kind of funny. So, and I also think that, because I think also dealing with dark material, I'm used to dealing with dark material, and really the way you can shine a light on it is really make people laugh their asses off, truly.
Right.
And so we can really see ourselves and see the absurdity of all of it. Well, and in this play, there is an intervention that's happening. The intervention is happening on the family member who has the worst addiction. Okay. Everyone else, they smoke, they pop pills, they drink, but this one is the culmination of all of it. And so, but also then it gets skewered in terms of what do we believe, how do we view addiction, and how do we view addiction in different, whether it's dealing with it and with a Caucasian family and dealing with it with an African American family. So I think we're dealing with it also with race as well. So it's really looking at the lens of addiction and the similarities and the surreal qualities around all of it. So I have a lot of experience dealing with loving people who are in the throes of addiction.
And do you think culturally, do you think we as a society are less helpful to African American families, and more, and if it's a Caucasian family, we have to get Trevor into therapy,
Right.
What do you find are the main differences? And
I don't know. I do believe that there are some strong cultural differences in terms of how we view addiction. Robert O'Hara, the playwright, said, he actually told the story the other day. He said, you know what? Addiction in my family is, I can go home for the holidays and there's an obvious crackhead at the table, and they're like, "Well, what's wrong with it? She needs help. She needs help. We got to get, she's sitting here. Everybody's sitting here like it's completely normal. They're like, well, we've tried to give her help. She doesn't want help, but she's still our family.
Right.
So as you deal with it and sort of in this normal way, which is also surreal. He just said, I couldn't believe it. What was happening? He was like, because he believes, therapy, you give people help, whatever. Like, but then what happens when they don't want it?
Right.
Do you ostracize them, or are they still part of your family? So these are just themes and questions, I think, that are running through just how we care for it, whether African Americans, Caucasian Americans, you name it. You know what I mean? So I think it was just, these are raising questions on how we deal with it. Rather than giving any answers.
Yeah.
So I really don't know.
Addiction
Addiction has no color. Yeah.
Right. And you also can't, if the person doesn't want it, you can't, it's not going to stick. They have to want it. And they have to be motivated.
It's such a strange thing, because I think, it's like, not that I've been experiencing this in my life. I won't say who, but I have someone very close to me who just went through rehab, and then within a month, you try to support them. You go and visit with them. You're like, great. And then you find that they are back. They're caught up again in it. It's a cycle. And you're like, hey, remember, they said that you would lose your job. Are you going to take care of that? Let's not challenge that. This is your last time. But you have to and then after a while, you have to make an agreement. I believe I just try to make an agreement to not judge anyone, and to just say, okay, I can still love you, and that's what's going to happen. And sometimes you have to let it happen.
Right.
You can't get in the way and just think I can help fix you, because I think we're all programmed to say, let me help you, let me take care of this. Do you need money? What is it? Can I help you move out of that neighborhood? What is it? But it's like, no, they have to want to do this stuff.
Right.
And then you can just, and then you have to. I'm in this place right now where I'm sort of making that decision. Because it's painful no matter what. You think, am I standing idly by while this person is just self-destructing, or am I letting them just? I have to let them do that, because I can't get involved. I can become that codependent in there, because then I'm a part of the problem as well.
Right.
So it's a strange thing, and it's like, and who knows? I've never been a person about. I've been a person that I think that has survived with many heartbreaks and things like that in their world without therapy. But I thought maybe this is something possibly I should look into a group to see how can I support or not support this thing.
Yeah,
because we don't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, if there's like an Al-Anon group or something that just gives you a bit of guidance in terms of how can you be a support structure without, because at a certain point it'll pull you down. Like you can't. You can be loving and helpful, but you also shouldn't sacrifice your own life, because then that'll have an effect, and that'll affect other people around you and pull them in. And so, I definitely think I completely support that, because it is a tough thing to manage on your own, and people who've been through it can be very helpful. So that type of group counseling or one-on-one counseling, I think, is really, really, really important.
Yeah.
What is your favorite? As we're kind of wrapping this out. Oh my gosh, that was an hour already. Holy shit.
Chris, we could talk for hours.
We could talk for hours.
We really could.
I kind of think. Are you around this weekend?
I'm around.
You should come to the wedding.
What?
You should come to the wedding.
What? I'll come to the wedding.
You should come to the wedding.
What? That's fun. Why not? I'll come to the wedding.
I would love to have you. I think it'd be really nice to have you at the wedding.
Oh, that's so sweet. I'll come to your wedding.
I appreciate that.
Okay. Yes, absolutely.
Saturday in the evening.
In the evening. Yeah. I love Saturday evening.
Great.
And somehow I bought great clothes with me.
It's perfect.
It's like listen. Is it casual? Is it what?
It's okay. So the Almost Wife did a thing where she, her family. She comes from a family of. They were ranchers, basically, and a lot of them still are. So she wanted to do this. Is kind of like she said that it's optional, but it's like there's like a cowboy formal optional attire. So if you like a suit and boots.
Wait, you guys didn't see this, but I actually just took a step back.
You took a step back.
I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah.
I'm like,
I never saw it coming either. And she was like, no, I think it'd be really cool. Optional.
Cowboy hat, cowboy boots, something like that?
You can do like bolo tie or cowboy boots and a suit or whatever. You don't have to.
What if I rode up on a horse?
That would be fucking incredible. If you rode a horse into Pasadena, where the wedding is happening. Yes. I think that would be amazing.
Chris, no, I will definitely come.
I would love to have you there.
Oh my God,
that'd be so
Chris and I
nice.
have been becoming friends.
We've been becoming friends.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's always fun because when you kind of start when you appear at stuff and we're at events and we do stuff together. It's like, oh, I like that guy. I want to hang out with that guy.
I felt the same about you. I felt like, but I feel like such a nerd. I'm like, I can't be like, oh,
of
Chris,
course
I
you
wanna hang out with
can.
you, man.
No, please.
Cool, man.
Okay, good. So you're coming to the wedding. That's
Great.
all done. Are you coming to the wedding? Okay, good. So I'd love to hear, as we're kind of wrapping this out, you said you were so inspired by Baldwin, right?
Yeah.
So what is a quote or something that you've learned or something to live by or something that you want people to know?
Oh, wow. There's, I actually discovered this essay of Baldwin's from 1963. He and Richard Avedon went to high school together, and they were friends all the way to their deaths. And they created this book of essays with this photography. And the book has been out of print for years. And me and my collaborator, Patricia McGregor, we did some of these essays for this Baldwin Festival a few years ago. And the last bit of it just really touched my heart. And it went something like this. I have slept on rooftops and in basements and in subways, have been cold and hungry all my life, have felt that no fire would ever warm me and no arms would ever hold me. I have been, as the song says, buked and scorned, and I know that I will always be. But my God, in that darkness which was the lot of my ancestors in my own state, what a mighty fire burned. In that darkness of rape and degradation, that fine flying froth and mist of blood, through all that terror and in all that helplessness, a living soul moved and refused to die. We really emptied oceans with a homemade spoon and tore down mountains with our hands. And if love was in Hong Kong, we learned how to swim. It is a mighty heritage. It is the human heritage. And it is all there is to trust. And I learned this through descending, as it were, into the eyes of my father and my mother. I wondered when I was little how they bore it, for I knew that they had much to bear. It had not yet occurred to me that I would also have much to bear, but they knew it. And the unimaginable rigors of their journey helped them to prepare me for mine. This is why one must say yes to life and embrace it wherever it is found. It is found in terrible places. Nevertheless, there it is. And if the father can say, yes, Lord, the child can learn that most difficult of words, Amen. For nothing is fixed forever and forever and forever. It is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rocks. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails. Lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us, and the light goes out.
Wow, Colman Domingo. Raising the bar on how we end a podcast now. We'll never be able to top that.
Thank you, Chris.
That is beautiful. And
Thank
I
you.
really hope that you get to make this. I hope you get to make this thing that you want to make.
Thank
and
you.
I hope you get to make. I feel like a 6, 8, 10 part miniseries.
I think that'll be extraordinary because I think it just, once again, I think all in all, I think hopefully what we're all trying to do, I think what you're trying to do, is we're just trying to bring us all together and really just trying to hold a mirror up to each other in this world and make this world a better place. In a Pollyanna way, like I always say, I'm such a Pollyanna, but that's my belief in why I try to do what I do.
Well, I hope people pursue that more than the I'm going to misbehave to try to get attention. And I hope people try to remember this.
Cool.
And you should follow Colman. You should be inspired. Follow Colman and follow the work of James Baldwin. And thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you at the wedding.
I'll see you at the wedding.
Oh man, you're so great to have you on.
too.
I'm so
Thanks,
glad we finally got to sit down and like have a long.
Me too.
At Comic-Con we talked for maybe 15 minutes and it was like. Oh, can you help us put out a fire? I'll be back.
right,
and I
exactly.
I put out a fire and I came back and everyone was gone. I'm like, well, yeah, I was gone for like 35 minutes trying to solve problems, but
We were gone, right?
We were gone, yeah. But it was so good to see you.
You too, Chris.
And thank you so much for sharing that, Colman Domingo. I should say, Fear the Walking Dead is back Sunday, the 21st.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Day after my wedding.
Exactly.
We're pre-taping Talking Dead. I had to. I'm done. Some people are like, "Are you really working the day after your wedding?" Like, no, AMC's letting me pre-tape the show. They're not making me work the day after my wedding. I'm going to be going to the honeymoon. And then Birth of a Nation opens in October.
October 7th.
And then people should see your play at the Geffen if they're...
which opens on September 14th. So that's preview September 6th.
And what's the name of the play again?
It's called Barbecue.
Yeah. Excellent. Colman Domingo, thank you so much for being here and sharing. Enjoy your burrito, everyone.
Now leaving Nerdist.com. Enjoy your burrito.